Hello you slags and welcome back to the channel. As you can tell, it's absolutely fucking pissing down in the UK, which sucks. I really hate this weather and I'm pretty sure most of you guys probably do as well, to be fair. I'm very much looking forward to booking my holiday to Australia in 28, 5 weeks of sun and traveling around, my first ever travel holiday. But yeah, this weather is just terrible. Like, it goes from one extreme to the next. I remember when I was in school, one of my friends would used to deliberately point at the puddles when we're walking into school to get a car to like splash him and then have to wear the PE kit all day. And the PE kit was dire, honestly, absolute dire. So I don't know why you'd want to wear that for the full day, but back then you were immature, back then you didn't really care. But anyways, in today's video, we are going to be going through my full training split. So I'll take you through a push day, but also I'm going to take you through the breakdown of reps, sets, while I'm doing certain exercises in my current phase, which is pre-prep. I'm also going to be taking you through a full food shop for the week, how I plan out my food shop so you can buy the most anabolic food going to grow and make the most progress this year. So if you like today's video, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button and enjoy. So that's a wrap on my morning clients. Just picked myself up a cheeky latte because one of my goals this year is to cut down on my Monster consumption, believe it or not, because I was having 2 a day every day and it was just costing me a fucking shit ton of money. And I can't believe how more expensive Monsters are. They're like £3 a pop now, especially in like places like Tesco's, which for some reason seems more expensive than Waitrose, if I'm honest. But yeah, currently on a latte, and I'm also listening to, I'm into a little bit more of liquid D&B at the moment. So Avalon Rays, Looking for a Way Out, banging beat, banging beat. I'm currently kind of going through the mixes of listening to different kinds of music to what's good for content, but also trying to find out what my posing routine song is going to be. And I've currently gone for a Stormzy song, which is pretty good. I'm into like more soulful stuff rather than like your cinematic Hans Zimmer songs or like stuff from the Interstellar. So Let Me Down, Georgia Smith and Stormzy, absolute insane beat. And I can just see myself flowing between poses with that song. So sounds a bit weird saying that, because I never think I'd ever say that before, but yeah, I'm looking forward to putting a little routine together once I get a posing coach. So if any of you guys have got recommendations for a very good posing coach, let me know, drop it in the comments, because I'm all ears. I'm looking out for some in the next coming weeks, which I'm really excited for. But yeah, finished my morning client. So Alex is a returning client, which is a fantastic feeling that a client has returned back after a stint away. He's got some confidence issues in the gym. He kind of injured himself away from when he left me, injured himself in the gym, and we're now slowly getting back into it and building that confidence up over time. So it's my job to kind of slowly increase that weight or in that intensity in the session. So we were doing a heavy incline bench on the leverage machine, which is a fantastic piece of equipment. It matches the arm path of a chest press, where you're kind of pressing in this arcing fashion like you see on powerlifters, things like that. 55 kilos, which is the most he's done for a long time, which is great. So got a little bit of a gap now to my next client. So I'm just going to go through how I would plan out your food shop, and then I'll actually take you through it later on. So when it comes to plan out your food shops, the first thing is just writing things down. It's so simple, but people always forget about it, is actually writing what you're going to have for eat for that week. It's really easy to go into a food shop and be like, all right, I'm going to freehand it. I'll have this for dinner this day, this for dinner this day, this for dinner this day. And then before you know it, you're having to think about so many different bloody dinners that it's just hard to manage it and stay consistent. So what I tend to do, I work it around my girlfriend, is we will sit down in the car or on the way to the supermarket and we'll plan out a week's food shop just for dinners, because we both have different schedules. I have the same breakfast every day. I have the same lunches every day. Dinner's the one that changes the most for me. So like, for example, the other week we had a Thai green curry for Monday, Tuesday. We then had a bolognese for Wednesday, Thursday, and then we had burgers for Friday, Saturday, and then using up any leftover stuff on the Sunday before we then do our next food shop. That is basically a simple little structure that you can follow to do your food shops. Other ways in which you can do it is a 2-week one, plan for 2 weeks, and you may have a dinner for 3 days worth. So you're essentially you're cutting down your cooking time in the week to, rather than cooking every bloody day of the week, you're now cooking 3-4 times a week, and you have more time to put into rest and recovery from your gym sessions, or just some TLC, reading a book or listening to a podcast, going and getting your steps in, enjoying some rewatching Stranger Things, which was fucking class as always. You know, those sorts of things. And you know, it's really easy to, when it comes to the food, the cooking side of things, that it takes so much away from your day that you're having, right, Sunday's my meal prep day, and you're there for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours prepping your meals, and it's just like, it just takes so much time of your day, which for some people that works. Some of my clients do that at the moment, that's absolutely fine. But for me, I like to try and spend less time in the cooking and more time eating. So a lot of my meals are very quick and easy to make. So for this morning, I had an omelette with some salad because I'm transitioning into my diet phase in February. On my second meal, I'll probably have yogurt and granola. Again, takes 10 seconds to put together. Big bag of granola, buy tubs of yogurt for the week. And then you've got a solid meal there. Maybe add a bit of dark chocolate if you fancy a bit more fats to slow down the digestion of those carbs before you train. And then post-training, it might be a bowl of oats or a bowl of oats and cream of rice, for example. And then whatever you then have for dinner and things like that. Obviously, you change the quantities of ingredients based on what phase you're in. So if you're in a gaining phase, you might have a little bit more granola. If you're in a dieting phase, you might have less granola and that sort of stuff. So take that away with you when you're doing your next food shops, is just plan for it. Plan your dinners. If you're also making lunches, plan your lunches, but make them batch, save yourself some money, because food shops are just getting ridiculously expensive nowadays and it's nuts. And the last tip, and people always forget about, is don't food shop when you're hungry. It sounds so simple, but like I've done it before where I go in and I've got my list and I still sway off my list because I'm thinking about what I'm gonna have to eat the moment I get home from the food shop. So don't do it when you're hungry. Always have some food before you go, because yeah, it's a recipe for disaster otherwise. And we are back from said food shop. I know it looks like a lot of food, but I promise you it's not all of that. Some of it is my girlfriend's and some of it is for a friend that's staying over this week. But one of the infuriating things I find about food shopping is where you're like in the zone, you want to get in and get out, and you've got two people in the middle of the aisle having a natter. Really absolutely pisses me off when people do that. I'm just like, move to the side and let people through so that we can get our food shop done and crack on for the day. Like I'm now having to go to the gym a bit later than I'd like to, which is not great. So altogether, this food shop costs £58.18, and that is excluding everything that my girlfriend bought for herself and the things we bought for a friend that's staying over later this week. Now, like I said earlier in the video, we tend to shop for dinners only because we both eat at different times, we both have different schedules. I had a couple of bits left in the fridge, like apples, things like that. So it's not 100% a complete food shop, it's just for dinners. But when you do tend to eat the same foods all the time, it makes your life 10 times easier because you really only have to kind of buy in bulk for kind of dinners and stuff. Like if you keep your meals a little bit more convenient side of things, such as like my yogurt and granola meals and like eggs, for example, you really don't really need to buy that much for the rest of the day, apart from your dinners and things like that. So my current protein sources at the moment are eggs. I tend to go through quite a lot of eggs in a week. I use a lot of egg whites for stuff at the moment. It seems I'm transitioning into a dieting phase. Keep my fats a little bit lower in the mornings, or calories a bit lower in the mornings, but protein a bit higher, so I can get a little bit more in. So I tend to have about 6 egg whites. So I do go through quite a lot. So I've got 4 of those. I've got 1.5 kilos of chicken. Now that's going to be used for 2 meals altogether. So we've got barbecue chicken for one evening with some bacon. And then we've also got a Thai red curry, which will be used for the other half. So we'll have 1 kilo for barbecue chicken, and we'll also have 500 grams for the curry for the next 2 nights after that. For my carb sources, and then my other carb sources that I tend to have quite a lot of times is natural yogurt. Now, the reason why I go for natural yogurt versus like Greek yogurt at the moment is because my calories are still quite high, they're in the 3000s. Natural yogurt tends to be a little bit on the lower side of protein and a bit more higher in terms of like the natural sugars and carbohydrates essentially. So that's why I tend to go for that. But when I'm transitioning into my prep from February, I'll be switching over to more Greek yogurt as it's higher in protein. It just allows me to hit more of my protein earlier on in the day, so I'm less reliant on like whey proteins and things like that. Another meal that we're also doing is toad in a hole, so we've got some pork sausages there as well. Now onto my current carb sources that I have for dinners and some throughout the day as well. Obviously we gotta love a bargain, so I've seen these hot cross buns that I will have with my egg omelette in the morning. So I tend to do 6 egg whites with cheese and spinach as well, and I'll whack that inside one of these or 2 of these if I've got the calories to play with. We've also got packets of rice. Again, I'm a massive fan of convenience. I can't be asked to faff with cooking a whole pan of rice for just myself. So I just buy these and it just saves me so much time. You know, 2 minutes in the microwave and you're done kind of thing. If you've got the disposal of a bit of money, you know, it's gonna save you a little bit. But again, if you want to save yourself even more money, just buy a massive bag of 5 kilo rice. So in Tesco's at the moment, you can get a 5 kilogram bag of basmati rice for £5. So every kilo is £1, which is a pretty good deal. We are, with our curry, having naan breads. So Peshwari naans is the pinnacle of naan breads. Don't want to hear anyone having anything else, but apart from my girlfriend's got garlic coriander, so I will be having words of her. We also got oats. So again, as I'm moving into my current phase, from my current phase at the moment into my dieting phase, I'll want to be including a little bit more fiber in my diet to keep myself fuller, alongside more volume, which is like vegetables and things like that. And one of the main things I've noticed with clients, and also just generally people, they don't get enough fiber in the diet, and oats is an absolute excellent source of fiber, along with vegetables and things like that too. Now, obviously, if you're gluten-free, you can get the gluten-free oats, and often they can be a little bit better in terms of digestion, but yeah, that's oats for you there. And then we've also, with our total haul, we've gone for another absolute bargain. Yorkshire puddings, which I fucking love. And there's like, again, on the roast dinner, it has to be on the roast dinner plate. And if you're going to like a Toby Carver and you do stack your plate up like I do, there's a strategy to it. You have to eat the Yorkshire pudding first, as you will not finish your roast dinner if you are stacking it. We've got some wraps as well, so I'll sometimes alternate. So because I've treated myself to a hot cross buns, I'll have those first, then I'll have wraps with my eggs in the morning. And then my kind of convenient carbs, especially if you're in a bulk, absolute excellent carb source for post-workout, Cocoa Pops or the Povo versions, which they're cheaper, but they do taste completely different to Cocoa Pops, I must admit. It's just a really easy way for you to get really high amounts of carbs in after your workout to replenish your glycogen stores, so that you can also hit more calories in one meal rather than kind of across many meals. Another kind of snackable carb that I tend to have a lot of in a game, especially and at the moment while I'm still transitioning into my prep, is malt loaf. It is an absolute excellent source of very quick, easy digestible carbohydrates. So per 30-gram loaf, there is 19 grams of carbohydrates, and it's only 93 calories. Like, absolute steal for carbs in the day. I will often either, like these are £1 at the moment, but I'll often go for the larger loaf because there's sometimes a lot more on offer. Other carb sources I tend to rotate around is potatoes. They are so cheap to buy, and you can literally make in many different ways. So we're having barbecue chicken with potatoes. We might do mash with one of the meals, and then I might do chips for the next. If you're looking for more variety in your food, cooking potatoes, for example, in many different ways for the same meal is that variety change. You're getting a different kind of texture with your meals. You're also getting a different way that you've cooked it. So mash versus fries versus wedges, that sort of stuff is, you know, so easy to do, and it makes your food a little more interesting as you're going through periods of dieting, gaining, and things like that. Some other stuff that I tend to use alongside meals, obviously like things that you combine stuff with. So we've got some Thai red curry sauce. Again, convenience. I could buy the paste and buy the coconut milk, but to save myself time, just buy a fucking jar of it. Honestly, like there's no point in faffing around making fresh stuff. If you're strapped for time, that is. If you've got loads of time, by all means, make something fresh for yourself because you've got the time to do. And if you find cooking a little bit more therapeutic, like some of my clients, by all means, that's fine. Again, looking at that time thing and ease of life, just buy a jar of it. It's just so much easier. Spinach, again, I'll have this with some meals, for example. So if I'm making a pasta bake, I'll have this within the pasta bake itself, and I might even use a whole bag across a couple of meals, or I have it with my eggs in the morning as well. We've got some barbecue sauce, again, for the barbecue chicken, gravy granules for the toad in the hole with some sage and onion stuffing. And then again, something every person, a lot of people forget about is just season your food. Now, my housemate Dave will laugh at this if he watches it, but I'm a massive fan of parsley, and I literally will always say parsley on this, parsley on that. No idea why, I just love the stuff. So I tend to mix both of these on my eggs in the morning. If I'm having fried eggs or an omelette, I'll tend to have parsley and paprika in my omelette or my fried eggs. Makes it an absolute game changer. We've got some lettuce. I've also got some frozen veg in the freezer, sorry. Now, again, convenience. Like what I tend to find is if I'm buying fresh vegetables, which is nothing wrong with it, they'll either go off in the fridge because I've forgotten about them, or they'll just take too long to cut up and faff around with. Whereas if I buy a bag of frozen veg, I can bang it in a microwave or in a pan for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, have it al dente. We've also got some dark chocolate in the fridge as well, which wasn't bought in today's food shop, but again, that's something I will use for fat sources. At the moment, because I am transitioning into a more of a lower calorie, I'll tend to use the 1 cal spray. But if you are in a bulk, using full fat oils will save you so much money on fats, well, like buying separate fat sources. Like you could buy peanut butter, for example, which is an excellent, buy that in bulk. But oils is just such a simple way to get them in. Likewise, if you are in a dieting phase, using things like 1 cal spray will save you on calories, and obviously it still needs to be tracked. So sometimes I'll use like 15 sprays of that with my eggs. If I'm frying chicken, I probably will use about 15 sprays, and it's just small amounts of calories that you tend to forget to track. that may impact the deficit or surplus and things like that you're in. Sometimes I may buy some nuts as well to help with just adding a few extra fats in, especially in a gain. But in a diet especially, I tend to not have those in. I use more dark chocolates, peanut butters, some cheeses as well. So cheeses are a great source of protein, but also a little bit more on the healthy fat side, sorry. So that again wasn't bought in today's food shop. I was bought in last week's one, so you can buy them in bulk and it saves you so much time and money. So yeah, £58.18 for this full food shop for a week isn't that bad, to be honest. And obviously me and my girlfriend will split the cost, so it's a little bit more cost effective. And there was some stuff that we didn't include in the video because it's stuff we wouldn't normally buy, and it's just that miscellaneous stuff. But if you're a single lad, obviously you can keep the cost down even further by buying things like massive bags of rice, huge crates of chicken, for example, buying beef mince in large packets, and if you're in a bulk, buying full fat beef mince to keep the fats even a bit higher for you, so you don't have to buy things like peanut butters and things like that. Obviously, by all means, you can buy them and things like that as well, but it just keeps the cost down even further. Using things like potatoes, like that, you can use them like many different ways for many different meals, and the whole bag will last you like a full week if you buy a big enough bag of it. So there are ways in which you can kind of cut corners with costs and stuff. Obviously, I like to really sway towards the convenience side of things, just for ease of life, and I like to spend less time cooking and more time actually eating my food and cracking on with work or going to the gym or unwinding and having downtime rather than spending hours and hours meal prepping. Keep the meals for myself in terms of like, I can prep them in 10 minutes and just chuck them in a Tupperware and take them to work. So plan now is to head to the gym. Rush hour at the moment, so it's going to be absolute ransackled. Kit's going to be so busy. I normally go about 12 o'clock, but it's now 3:45. So I'm going to hit the gym. I'm going to record that session for you guys, and then I will head back here to go through my training split for you about what I'm doing in my current phase of training. I was right. This session was absolutely hectic. Completely wrong time to train, and I did actually end up dropping 1 or 2 reps on a couple of exercises, but this one held its strength. A flat cable press. Really, really like this exercise as it converges, whereas a bar press doesn't. But just how it sets up, and I really connect well with my chest a lot more in this. I find that over years of using bars and stuff, I just end up just shifting it from A to B, where I can really connect with my chest by driving those biceps in hard into the midline of my body, and drive my back into the bench, which when you're doing like powerlifting and things like that, I find that you drive your feet into the ground, your bum comes off the seat, and then you basically essentially lose that stability. Now I am lifting over just over half a stack on this at the moment, so rep progressions are coming really, really slowly, but I'll take them when I can. And this last rep was an absolute challenge, or the last couple of reps were a bit challenged. Only doing 2 sets on this, and they're both 8 to 12 rep range, so quite heavy to start off the session. I'll take 1 or 2 warm-up sets just to get my chest prepared for what's about to come. And then move into a Smith machine press, reverse banded. Now the band is there to help me reach failure a little bit easier without spotter, because I do train by myself a lot of the time. So basically just adjust the resistance profile to match my strength. So we want less weight at the bottom and more weight at the top. So it just takes off a little bit of that percentage and reverts it on the way back up. Now, after watching this back, I probably am going a little bit too quick. Don't really get much of a pause in the bottom of this. So probably that's something I'm going to address going into next week. This is a really heavy exercise for me at the moment. Like, this is the most I've lifted, 61 and a bit kilos. So it's quite heavy. So I'm taking my time. Like, if I am going quick one week, I won't take, and I have hit the reps, I will not go up and wait until I slow it down and get those pauses. Now, when you are using a reverse band, something I found as well is like, it's really easy just to slingshot you out of it. Really make sure you pause at the bottom, essentially. I'm also trying to play around with my grip on this exercise as well. So when you have your arms, or what I found is when I have my arms a little bit wider, I do just recruit a lot more anterior delt. Whereas if I bring my arms slightly a little bit closer, it engages my tricep a little bit more, which means I'm now lifting with both, well, all 3 muscles that are engaged in this exercise: your chest, your anterior delt, and your triceps, versus just 2 of them. So it is enabling me to lift a little bit more weight. So that's something that I'm playing around with within my setup at the moment, and taking the time to look at it as well when I'm watching videos back and thinking, could I maybe gone a little bit closer to the grip, or should I have maybe gone a bit wider? Now, the third exercise for my chest is a cable fly. Again, these benches are terrible for this because they don't go fully vertical, so I have to put the cables a bit lower. Moving a little bit too quick. I think my tempo here is 2-1-1-1, so probably a bit too quick and probably going a bit too far back. As you can see, as I come back, my shoulders start to elevate a little bit, so I probably could have paused it a bit earlier. Doing 3 sets of 12 to 15 reps on this, and on the incline Smith, I'm doing 2 sets, 1 heavy, 1 light, 8 to 10 and a 10 to 12. Now with this one, really all I'm trying to do is put a lot of weight in that stretch. That's why the cables are basically 90 when you get to the back of the rep there. And again, just focusing on driving my biceps in hard within this exercise. Now I'm moving into my only shoulder exercise in my program, or medial delt exercise, calf lateral raise. Now the height of the bench will differ across programs. So this block I put it at about 70 degrees because I ended up hitting a plateau with it being lower. So when you raise the bench up, it actually makes the exercise heavier because I'm now lifting the full weight of my arms. I'd like to say my arms weigh 10 kilos each, but they don't, unfortunately. But it has made the exercise harder. It had to go lighter, which means I'm extending the progression of that exercise a lot further. Playing around again with the setup of this one, when I've watched videos back before, I actually am engaging a little bit more my rear delts just because of where the cables are pulling. So I've actually put the cables 2 notches lower, and it's now pulling at the right angle for my anterior delts. As you can see, that was a really tough last rep. Start to elevate that last shot, it's good kind of to pull it. My next tricep exercise is a single arm tricep extension. Heavy in the mid-range, and the important thing I'm doing with this one at the moment is actually trying to really push my shoulder down to engage my lat a little bit more to keep myself stable, so that when I do get to these tough reps, it is going to be a case of not losing that form. I did really need a piss during this exercise, which is probably why it's a little bit more rushed than usual. So again, I'm going to rectify this going into next week. But I'm lifting quite heavy on this, heavier than I've done it before, 10.5 kilos. So again, it's taken me a while to get those rep progressions, but I'm going to take it as much as I can and using my arm to give me a bit of self-assistance when I need it. And then into the final exercise, which is going to be a JM press. Now this is really, really old school. I've never actually really done one of these for a long time. I'd normally do like a skull crusher, but the coach put it in, playing around with it with the setup as well, because obviously with the Smith machine, like the wrist position isn't particularly great. So when you do find you're doing that and you're getting wrist pain, actually get a wrist wrap, ones you use like for bench press, wrap around the bar and hold on to that, and it's magical. Like it puts your grip in a much better position. I did actually take a rep reduction on this, mainly because the Smith machine that I'm using on this one is terrible. It wobbles around versus the other one doesn't. It's the newest one in the gym, and it's also heavier as well. So the one I'm using now is lighter, so to match the weight, it's actually not going to be essentially the same. One is going to be heavier than the other, and unfortunately this was one, it felt a little bit heavier today. So it was only 1 rep down, but again, I'm putting it down to the fact that the session was later in the day than I'd like to, which does make a massive difference. But really trying to pause at the bottom, bending my elbows as much as I can, and driving my biceps still across my chest, because that's also going to engage a little bit more chest recruitment there as well, and a bit more chest volume across the week. Push session done. Now tucking into my post-workout Cocoa Pops as always, almond milk, and 45 grams of Chocolatella protein powder, which is absolutely banging. And while I've been tucking into this, I've been looking at the Pokemon Lego that's just been released, or rumoured to be released. It looks fucking insane. I'm not normally a Lego person. My girlfriend's the Lego person, obviously with all the Disney stuff behind me and things like that. But she did get me this fucking sick Nike Dunk for Christmas, and you can pull it out. Little stuff goes in there, but also like there's a back bit to it where it kind of comes out and has the word Nike. I'm yet to build that. Deciding whether I want to or not, because I kind of like it here on my desk. But also I want to kind of see the finished product and see whether it can still fit on my desk without it. But yeah, the Charizard, Venusaur and Blastoise Pokemon, this, if you can see it in the video, looks incredible. And I wouldn't mind giving that a go myself. I used to be a massive Pokemon guy way back when, in my youth days. I remember at secondary school, I used to have a shit ton of Pokemon cards, trading and all sorts, and then kind of just lost interest. But when it comes to like Lego and stuff, that's pretty sick. So I'm tempted to get that. I believe it's like 600 quid, which is way out of my price range for Lego. But if my girlfriend and my housemate want it, we might all chip in and go 3 ways on it. And that way we can kind of take it in turns to own it, but or take it in turns to build it and things like that. But we'll see. So I'm going to finish my post-workout, and then I'm going to take you through my training split for my current health / pre-prep phase at the moment before I start my prep in February. Okay, here it is. The training split I'm using for gains in this current phase. Now, like I said earlier in the vlog, I'm currently in my pre-prep maintenance phase ahead of prep in February. So really, it hasn't changed from my gain. I'm still trying to push weight, push more reps each and every session, perhaps even change the technique if it's getting a little bit too easy, change the technique, it makes it harder, more room for progress there, okay? Now, like I said in my push day, I did actually drop a couple of reps. Now, can be normal, down to different things, like if you had poor night's sleep, if you underfueled yourself, so if you fuel yourself 2 hours before a session normally, but then you come to the session, that session you only fueled yourself an hour before, it's not like you had enough time to digest and store in your muscles ready to go. If you've underhydrated yourself, all that sort of stuff does have an impact on how an effective session feels, okay? So currently in my gain and in this phase, I am really trying to push more back and hamstring growth. When I'm going on stage, from what I've learned over the years and obviously having an interest in bodybuilding, most shows are one from the behind, from the rear, okay? So I'm really trying to push that because in my previous gain to this one and this phase now, I really tried to push more chest and shoulder growth. I spent 2 years pounding my upper chest, pounding my medial delts to get into a position where I'm fairly happy with them. Obviously, they do probably need a bit more size to be a little bit more competitive in years to come. But the main part of this 1.5 to 2 year long gaining phase was to grow my back and hamstrings. So 1 push day at the moment and 2 sets across majority of repetitions. Now, when you get a little bit more advanced with your training and you're able to pause in end ranges and slow things down, give or take, if you're taking a weight progression, it's probably going to feel a bit harder to slow it down, but then you spend a couple of weeks on it and it gets better, right? Rather than just moving a weight from A to B and using weight as the only metric of progress, you are sticking to certain tempos. Now, this is obviously what my coach has prescribed me. And on this one, it tends to be 3-1-1-1 tempo for the costal chest press. So that's what I'm trying to replicate every time I go into the gym. Now, by doing these tempos, it's meant that I'm now able to do 2 sets. I can essentially make 2 sets feel like 3 sets from the intensity that I'm lifting at, okay? So that's why I'm doing less volume at the moment and more intensity-based training. And as I'm going into prep, it's harder to recover from high volume training. So I'm going to be swaying towards more intensity-based stuff, potentially even taking this out and adding in more machine-based press instead because of the lack of stability this one offers, okay? However, 2 sets across, straight sets, 8 to 12. Then going into an incline reverse banded 45-degree Smith machine press. This is for my clavicular fibers of my upper chest, okay? Or my upper chest generally, okay? So a 6 to 10 and a 10 to 15. And again, making sure that my elbows are stacked underneath my wrist the whole time. And the bar is positioned in a way that when I finish at the top of the rep, my bicep is finishing basically in line with my upper chest. If it's finishing in the middle of my chest, or I've adjusted my ribcage angle, so I'm creating an arch in my back, and it's now finishing in the middle of my chest, that's not really no longer targeting my clavicular fibers. Okay, it's very important when you're doing your incline Smith work or incline press work, keep your back flat on the bench because it keeps your upper chest nice and high. Into my D-handle cable fly, again, 10 to 15, 3 sets, okay? So straight sets on those. Supine cable, cuffed lateral raise, 2 minutes rest, 8 to 12 across 3 sets again. And then moving into my only tricep work for this session, which was the single cable press, straight sets 8 to 12, and then straight sets of 12 to 15 across 3 sets on my JM press. Now, because I only train 4 days a week, we wanted to add, some back volume in. So we've done a full body pull day across 2 sessions. So this is my current full body pull day. So reverse abdominal crunch. Now my abs are quite developed at the moment. So we've actually taken some volume away that we can add into some other stuff. So we've actually added in the machine abductor at the moment to add a bit more abductor volume in. Normally I'd only have 1 day in the week where I train my adductors. So we've added an extra 2 sets. All right. So it means I can, because my abs are fairly well developed, not really fussed about growing them at the moment. So maintenance volume for those areas. A barbell RDL, so straight sets again on those, 5 to 8 reps. I find that when I go past 8 reps, my spine starts to hurt. Okay, and that's mainly because my ability to hold myself in shape goes. Okay, my technique breaks down essentially. All right. This is why I'm making sure that I am keeping within a rep range where I can hold that technique and get the most out of it, but also lift with a decent amount of intensity as well. Into the adductor, so 2 sets, 8 to 10. So fairly heavy on this because on my other session it's a bit lighter, more reps. And obviously before I had the adduction, so both add and abduction in this session. Single arm cable pull down, top and back offset on these ones, so 8 to 10 and 10 to 12. And again, a tempo of kind of a little bit quicker, so 2-1-1 on this one versus a 3-1-1 tempo, which means I can move a little bit more weight over a more higher speed. And then going into the chest supported machine row. Now, obviously this is on a matrix one versus the one my coach has got. So I've adjusted the pad a little bit to make it more comfortable because the metric stuff is generally terrible to use. So you can make it better by adding extra stuff to it to essentially create a more enjoyable exercise, but essentially make you feeling it more too. Rear cable fly on the standing. Now I'm standing a bit further back on this one for one reason only, to try and tax the short range of my rear delts. So standing further back means that when your arms are directly out to your side, the cable is pulling at 90 degrees to your wrist, give or take. Okay, if I'm standing closer into the cable and it's pulling at 90 at the start, it's going to be heavier in that length and range. Okay, so this is why I've placed it a little bit more stood further back, so I'm taxing more of that short range because we did a lot of length and range work in my previous block of training. Get a bit of forearm volume in the next exercise, which is standing hammer curls, very, very heavy on this. 2 sets, 8 to 12, and then into cable incline curls with the back support, 3 sets of 10 to 15 reps with 2 minutes rest. So that's basically a breakdown of my full body pull day to add a little bit more growth to that area. Now, I only train quads once a week. My quads tend to respond quite well to less volume, I find. And what we did find with this when I first started this split was that I actually had too much volume in there. I was struggling to recover from it. And that's the thing you've got to play around with when you're coming to your training programs, is if you've got too much volume and you're struggling to recover, then that next session is going to be terrible, right? So everyone's volume demand is going to be different on person to person, right? So for me, I had 3 sets of hack squat, 3 sets of leg extension, and I was struggling to recover. Whereas now I've got 2 sets of both and 2 sets of leg press. My legs recover fine. 3 days later, they're by the 3rd day later, they've recovered basically. And that's why I'm only training once a week. Bit of added tricep in here as well to add a bit more volume to the triceps. So starting off with some prep work, so cable hip flexions to get my hips nice and prepared ready for some heavy squats on the hack squat. Cable push down, straight sets on these and straight sets on the single arm tricep overhead extension. Then in the leg extension, so again, going really heavy on this. Now this is again, very dependent on person to person, but sometimes you'll find that you can't really tolerate in your knees going heavy on a leg extension. But for me, I find that I can tolerate it quite well. So I am doing a little bit more of intensity based stuff on this exercise. Same with my hack squats. I'm finding that, again, I can go really heavy on this versus on a back squat. I probably wouldn't be able to go as heavy. I hate barbell back squatting. I hate having the bar on my back. I just can't get the right position and it's really unstable for me, right? But for you, it might not be. But for me, I prefer doing a more stable exercise where I can really get the most out of my quadriceps. So we're doing a top and back offset on this one. Heavy on the first set, a bit lighter on the second to get a variety of both intensity and volume across both sets there. And then a very high volume leg press. 2 sets, very wide foot stance to get a little bit more adductor volume in there as well, versus doing a more narrow foot stance to get a bit more quads and a bit lower foot placement as well. And that's going to get a little bit more volume in those areas. And then finishing off with a calf press and then a cable abdominal crunch as well. 2 sets, 10 to 15, just to get a bit more ab volume in there as well. Normally I used to do 3 sets of both reverse ab crunch and abdominal crunch with the cable machine. And then tying off the rest of the week is my full body pull day. Okay, my second one. Now this is a little bit of a shorter session because and basically just finishing up the volume for the week. So a seated cable row with a dual handle. Okay. Now this is mainly because I've got the other chest support in my other session, but also what I'm finding is as the cables come closer together, they converge in. I get a little bit more stretch across my upper back, which means I'm essentially lengthening those fibers a little bit more when I'm in that protracted position. Going into the dual pulley neutral grip lat pull down, again, same reason. With the dual handles, and they're coming closer together at the top, I'm bringing my arm across the midline of my body a little bit more. So I'm going to get a bit more length on those lats versus using a straight bar, right? Now, this is not really any different to using a dual handle when the handles separate, not the angled bar one. It's essentially the same. apart from I'm just not really bringing my arms across my body, okay? And what you'll find as well with the dual handle ones is if you are attaching one handle to both clips, so if you're doing a single arm lat pull down, you're basically lifting that whole of that 61 kilos if you're on 61 kilos on the stack, right? But if you then attach one handle to one clip and you're doing a single arm lat pull down, you're lifting half the weight, which means you can make more progress with that, okay? Because the ratio of the cable differs. When you're using both clips, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. When you're using one clip on a dual cable lat pull down, it's then a 2-to-1 ratio. So you're lifting half the weight, which means you've got more room to progress on that exercise. My other hamstring work, a lying hamstring curl, metrics again, 8 to 12, 2 sets, and then 2 sets of the hip extension. I'm literally maxing out weight on this now on the hip extension. I've never really done that before. So I'm reaching all-time strengths at the end of this phase at the moment, going into prep, which I'm thoroughly excited to see if I can hold and maintain my strength in my prep phase. So 6 to 8 and 8 to 12 on this. Some more adductor volume again, like I said earlier, 10 to 15 across 3 sets. Cable preacher, really taxing that length and range. So the cable's going to be pulling at roughly 90 at my wrist at the end of the range. And then when I come on over, the cable then starts closing off onto my wrist to make it a bit lighter. And then an incline dumbbell curl to finish off my biceps. So that's basically a breakdown of my current training at the moment. When I go into prep, I'll break down again any changes that go through that. But if you enjoyed today's video, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and stay tuned for next week where I'm going to take you through a full day of eating.